read the headline from the CDC. Man, Larry, they are going to be leading the news. They already are. Here's how Politico says it. Politico says, Larry, quote, "This sounds really, really bad." They quote the New York Times. "Americans should brace for the likelihood the coronavirus will spread to communities in the U.S., the CDC warned Tuesday. Dr. Nancy saying it's not so much a question of if this will happen, but a question of when. They're warning Americans for significant disruption to their daily lives, Larry.
Well, look, our public health people, who are spectacular, the best in the world, are preparing for any eventualities. And that's exactly what they should do. They were ahead of the curve on the travel bans. Now they're ahead of the curve insofar as laying out potential emergency plans. That doesn't mean it's going to go into effect, but they're doing exactly what we're doing. We're going to get a supplemental. We've asked for a supplemental up on the Hill of a couple of $2 billion or so. That's exactly what they were doing. I just want to say, though, as far as the U.S. is concerned, when you look at this, I mean, you had a little higher head count on the infections because of the cruise ship people coming off. We have contained this. I won't say airtight, but pretty close to airtight. We've done a good job in the United States. Hats off to our public health people. And the other generic point, and I hope we'll explore this, Kelly, is simply this. This is a human tragedy. There's no question, particularly in China. Human tragedy with, thousands of deaths. God look over them. Terrible. And that's the worst part of this. The business side and the economic side, I don't think it's going to be an economic tragedy at all. There'll be some stumbles. We're looking at numbers. It's a little iffy. We might have a clear picture in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But at the moment, Kelly, the numbers that we're looking at on all these Federal Reserve regional ISMs, today's consumer confidence number, there's no supply disruptions yet. It may be out there. I don't want to negate it. I'm just saying all I can do is look at the numbers.
Yeah,
and numbers are saying the U.S. is holding up nicely.
Right, and that's why I highlight the CDC today. I think this is a turning point. I think up until now, there was very little response in the U.S. other than people buying face masks and buying medicine. Now, after these headlines, Larry, this is going to change behavior rapidly. And here's my concern. People are going to look at these numbers in which the U.S. gets 74% of its acetaminophen from China, 95% of its ibuprofen, 80% plus of antibiotics from China. A construction worker neighbor of mine couldn't get a face mask this morning already. Now that these headlines are out there, all of those shortages are going to get worse, aren't they? And the economic impact is now going to start to grow.
Well, Kelly, I think you're making a lot of assumptions there, with all due respect. And we will see, with respect to supply chains and the availability of pharmaceuticals and other forms of equipment. I know there are issues there, and I accept that. I think we can deal with those issues at a later time when the emergency passes, as it will. But I'm not at all convinced that we can't get hold of what we need here in the U.S. We have stockpiles. We also have the capacity to produce more in all these areas. I'm no expert in this, but we've seen some of these biotech companies, Gilead being one of them, probably coming up with a vaccine in a much shorter time than people realize. Look, I don't want to sound heartless or cruel or anything. This is a human tragedy. It's mostly centered in China. There is contagion elsewhere, Italy, Iran. I think that's what's upset the market. So I understand that.
Right.
I would say, number one, the head of the World Health Organization today said, let us not overreact. I think that's an important point. I will make the same point on the economy. That's all I'm capable of doing, Kelly, and I may not be right here. But I will say this. Based on the numbers we know, GDP, Atlanta Fed GDP now is 2.6% for Q1. That could change, but that's what we know through February 19th. All these regional Federal Reserve ISM reports, they're not hearing chatter about the virus, and there is no evidence yet of any supply disruptions. That could change. Yeah, I appreciate that. But I can only go on the facts that what I know. That's all I can do.
I think you and I would agree Goldman's pretty good as an arbiter of this stuff. I mean, I think, kind of taken home the blue ribbon the last couple of years on their GDP. They've actually been more optimistic than most on the U.S. economy. They're at about a 1% reading for the first quarter. Again, it's not a disaster. It's not 3%. Again, we understand that. That goal remains, out there. But as the CDC starts talking about, and this is literally a direct quote from Dr. Nancy this morning, she says, ask children's schools and daycares about plans for closures or teleschool. Explore possibilities to work remotely. Options for telemedicine. I mean, this is going to change, this is going to have an economic impact. There's only a month left of the first quarter. Now this could go into the second quarter, Larry.
Well, look, those are appropriate planning measures by the best public health system on the planet. Absolutely appropriate. Whether they are put into effect, whether they become necessary here, remains to be seen. Again, I'll make the point, what we know now, as of today, this is very tightly contained in the U.S. Elsewhere, it's a human disaster, as I said before. But right here, we're doing awfully well so far. But I don't mind that our public health people, who are very knowledgeable with vast experience, they are a model for the rest of the world. This is what they should be doing. This is exactly the planning. We did this. We were ahead of the curve on banning flights and so forth, and we will try to remain ahead of the curve to protect American citizens. It's exact, but that does not mean that all this will come to pass. And again, I was just interested in the World Health Organization head who said, let's not overreact to that. I would make the same point on the economic side. The human tragedy side, difficult, horrible. The economic side, there is no tragedy in the United States. China is going to take an awfully big hit. Now, I was interested, too, I'm sure you know this, the IMF came out today, Kristalina came out today and said, yeah, they're going to get slammed in the first quarter, but it could be a V-shaped recession. So look, what I'm saying is, I, in the spirit of trying to stay calm here, take a look at the facts at our hand, see if they work or not.
Yeah.
The next few weeks will be very important. I just think people should be as calm as possible in assessing this. And emergency plans, Kelly, don't necessarily mean
I understand.
they will
I'm just
have
saying
to be put into place.
You know how the media business works. If the CDC says it today, it's all anyone's going to be talking about tomorrow. So if they're trying to keep people from overreacting, I'm telling you they are now going to contribute to a larger reaction.